Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Trainwreck Sports podcast, the Pay the Bills podcast. We're here this week, Jake Micah, joined as always by Michael Partham and our guest, Robin Mundy. Today, as everybody has probably seen in the news, there have been allegations against Von Miller for domestic violence and a domestic incident that took place in his home in Dallas. Before we get into any of that, we want to provide resources for anyone who may potentially be affected by domestic violence or know somebody in their life affected by this, as the most important thing is getting help, and there are resources out there for your help. The National Domestic Violence Hotline's 24/7 hotline. You can call 1-800-799-SAFE to get help from a national perspective. New York State, the coalition, New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence, the number is 518-482-5465. In Monroe County, the Willow Domestic Violence Center, 585-222-7233 is the 24/7 hotline available to you. And the Rochester Monroe County Domestic Violence Consortium is available 8:30 to 5, 585-428-2215. In Niagara County, the YWCA of Niagara, phone number being 716-433-6716. And the Child Advocacy Center of Niagara, 716-299-0909 are there to support. In Chautauqua County, the Victim Assistance Center at 716-753-4390, and Project Crossroads, which is an educational project in the city of Jamestown, New York, to prevent domestic violence issues, 716-483-7718. And in Erie County, the Family Justice Center, 716-558-7233. The Erie County Coalition Against Family Violence, 716-884-6002, and Be Safe Domestic Violence Victim Advocacy Program, 716-858-4630. I'm going to post all these numbers and resources underneath the tweet here, and share those out after. Now let's talk about what the allegations are, and I want to present a trigger warning for anybody who is listening and been affected by domestic violence, as these are gruesome details that we've learned about during the day. According to the warrant, an incident began at Von Miller's house with his girlfriend at about 10:40 a.m. yesterday. As he slammed the door out of frustration, he allegedly this is all allegations. He has turned himself in as of about 20 minutes ago to the Glen Heights Police Department for the allegations. He became visibly angry, yelled at her to get out while attempting to push and shove her out of the apartment. The warrant accuses Miller of the following: pushing his girlfriend while stepping on her feet, applying pressure around her neck twice, once with one hand, one time with two hands, throwing her laptop on the ground and stomping on it, pulling her by the hair and ultimately pulling out a chunk of hair, and grabbing her and pushing her into a couch. The warrant states that both Miller and the victim attempted to record video on the phone during the altercation. Miller allegedly left the apartment once his girlfriend said he was going to call the police. The Dallas Police Department's domestic violence unit interviewed the victim after the incident and observed minor abrasions on her left hand, along with bruising to her neck, injuries consistent with applied pressure to the neck. And as we said, as of today, about 30 minutes ago, he had turned himself in to the Glen Heights, I believe that's the Glen Heights Police Department, on a $5,000 bond. Obviously, this is extremely disheartening and troubling to hear from anybody, let alone a Buffalo Bill or an NFL player. And it's an incidents like this seem to happen too often when it comes to football and NFL and professional sports. And this is really just a space for us, as we kind of talked about before we came on here, to kind of talk through everything that we learned today and just how we feel like we should go forward with this. And Robin, thank you for coming on this program. As we talked about, we wanted you to come on. We invited you on last week as a guest. I was going to talk to you about Josh. I loved your blog about Josh Allen the last couple of weeks and where he's been at, and just your perspective on the Bills in general. And just thank you for your willingness to come and talk about this extremely difficult topic. But you said that you thought, like we did, that it was important to have you on, important to discuss this and take the time on our episode today.
Thank you for inviting me to participate in this discussion. I feel like it's important for all of us, Bills Mafia, whatever you want to call us as a fan base, to have a presence, to talk, to listen, to share. As you pointed out, sometimes these issues, when they come up, can be very triggering. We all need to be very patient with one another on social media. There's a lot of stuff flying around. I applaud you, Jake and Michael, for coming on and talking about the facts, because that's what we need to focus on right now are the facts and what we know right now from the allegations. Obviously, they're extremely serious. When you talk about applying pressure, choking someone, it doesn't take much more to go from that to the next step. And the one thing that I think we mentioned in pre-production just momentarily, I believe that there is also, and you guys can fill me in on this, a history that Von Miller has had with domestic violence. Is that right?
From what we've been able to put together, there was an investigation back in 2021 in Colorado, but no charges were ever filed. And
Oh,
as far as we knew, that there was only a very brief investigation as to things that may have happened. I'm trying to find the article right here.
mhm.
And that I believe it was supposed to have involved Von Miller's on and off again girlfriend, which is said to be the woman in question in this incident that is being reported. And there was also a lawsuit that was dismissed that was filed back in April of 2022, right after Von Miller had joined the Bills, and then dismissed in May of that same year. Alleging that Von Miller had sent revenge porn to a couple of celebrities. I'm not sure if it's also involving the woman in question in this particular incident, but there are previous incidents that, previous investigations, I should say, that Von
That have
Miller was
taken.
involved in.
Yeah,
And
and one of
at this point,
one.
it seems to be, without being able to say, to speak on the truthfulness or the accuracy of either of these other investigations, it seems to be a developing pattern and a disturbing one at that.
Very concerning for sure, and something that I would like to think that after all the things that we've been through, starting, you go back to Ray Rice and and so on, the personal conduct policy that was developed as a result of some other investigations that have happened in the past. What we know is that the personal conduct policy is quite specific. And so nothing prevents the NFL from starting their own investigation in this matter. So my hope is that in a timely way that we will have Roger Goodell stand up and do what is necessary to do to get the information you need to see if there is in fact been a violation of the personal conduct policy, because you don't have to wait for the court to adjudicate a case to suspend a player if they have violated the personal conduct policy. And I think that the NFL is wealthy enough that they can hire the right kind of private investigators, whoever they need to do a proper investigation. But, and I'm speaking as a woman here, I would like to see, because domestic violence happens on both sides of the equation. But as a woman, my view is I would hope that Roger Goodell would take this matter seriously enough to address it as quickly as possible, because this is not something that should fester and fester and fester, especially if they have the ability to hire the investigators to see if, in fact, a violation of the personal conduct policy has taken place. There should be no question then what action should be taken, in my opinion. But this is painful. It's painful to go through this again and again. And as you pointed out, we have a pattern that we see with professional athletes, and it isn't even just in the NFL as a whole. I thought it was interesting when you just mentioned that the bail was set at $5,000. I'm not sure what I think about that, other than that seems awfully low for somebody of Von Miller's means.
Yes.
And I don't know where do we go as fans with this? Where do we go? What do we do?
Well, Von Miller having a reputation as being one of the more positive voices on this team in the last couple of years, and having at least last season being one of the more high profile contributing members as far as production goes before his injury, it has to be a blow not just to as far as talent goes on the team, regardless of how well he was doing coming back from injury, but it has to be a blow to that locker room and the culture of it. Things have happened in recent times where players had to be dismissed due to allegations, and it's important to say that those allegations were dismissed. But that was involving a draft pick that hadn't yet made the team. This is much more serious, much more high-profile player who's regarded as a positive voice on that team. And you have to think that regardless of how this plays out, it's going to affect the psychology of that locker room going forward from here.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. If for no other reason, the distraction alone, and it's not as if we haven't had a bunch of issues going on this year that have made the team questionably perform at 6-6, but now you have a locker room and let's face it, these are issues that affect all of us deeply. And I can't believe that in the culture that the Bills have embraced with Sean McDermott, that this wouldn't hit the locker room like a bomb. Because
you think back to last year, Damar Hamlin and his incident hit that locker room like a bomb, of course, and continued to affect them afterward. Even after his health continued to improve, he was able to meet with the team. He was able to attend a game, give positive messages going forward. But that was as traumatic as that was. It was all positivity going forward, step by step, and. Right. I don't see any kind of positive end to this one way or the other. So this is going to linger a little bit longer and a lot more harder. I think a little bit more harder than the Damar Hamlin incident. It's going to be harder to resolve, I guess, for the guys in that locker room that work with Von Miller, knew him, trusted him, probably considered him a friend at this point. It's probably going to be a lot more harder to deal with, I would think.
They talk about family, they talk about family a lot, and the culture with the Bills, it's not like other clubs. It's not. The players will tell you that. You read that all the time. They say when they come to Buffalo, it really is different in Buffalo. And maybe some of it is because Buffalo is Buffalo, but we, even as a fan base, don't you think that the relationship that we have with players is intensified compared to other places? I don't know if I'm making sense, but
no, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I remember who was it, Tim Russert, that said, Washington has all this stuff and Dallas has all this stuff, and Buffalo, we have the Bills. So they're woven into the fabric and the identity of Buffalo. So when something adversely affects the team in any sort of manner, whether it's a snowstorm, player's health, or an incident like this, it's going to adversely affect the psychology of Bills fans in Buffalo pretty harder, more so than other teams, I would think.
I believe that's true. Maybe there's other places, maybe Green Bay,
sure.
Maybe Pittsburgh, I don't know, but there is no place. We talk about this all the time. There is no place like Buffalo, and there is no fan base like ours. And we bleed, like we talk about, with the team. And our emotions are tied very much with the ups and downs of this team. And that includes personal life issues, tragedies of all sorts. It's going to be very interesting to see, because Sean McDermott has always prided himself at being on top of the culture issue, communicating, all of those sort of things that go along with the intangibles that I talk about in terms of the game of football. Well, he's going to have to have his captain's hat on now. And this is going to get very interesting, because let's also remember that he's very well divided his time in terms of calling plays on defense. Now he's got another whole layer of stuff on top of everything else that he has to deal with. So if ever there was a time that the pressure was on him, aside from the issues with the football team, now it's going to be intensified even more. And I guess what I think is important for us to remember as a fan base is that we can also lead the way in terms of leading discussions and trying to keep people focused and true to what the information tells us, and not letting facts get turned into hyperbole and all sorts of other things. I don't know if you've been on social media much today. I've tried to avoid it, but I have been on periodically, and some of the stuff that I see is just crazy. So my message is, I think we all need to take a deep breath. Maybe we all need to think about how we move forward as a fan base. And, we led the way when it came to Josh Allen's grandmother. We showed other teams how to lead the way in terms of being giving people, how to interact with the community and the fans and the players. We have this unique relationship. I think it's incumbent upon us as a fan base to lead the way through this in as professional a way as we can. Now, that sounds weird to say because we're fans, right? But there are things that we can do to alleviate some of the discord or dysfunction, if you will, that we see on social media. I worry about that a lot, because just today, looking through some of the stuff, some of the stuff people post is just crazy. So I think it's important for all of us to take a leadership role where we can and be voices for civility, voices for listening to other people's points of view, being open-minded. These are all things that we're not always known for as a fan base. So I'm thinking that this is an opportunity for us to take the leadership that we are known for, and to take a negative situation and do right by it as best we can. Be exemplary.
Well said, Robin.
Yeah, very well said.
Yeah, it's an emotional time. It's an emotional topic. I don't know. It seems like every time we go through this, it's like, are we ever going to get this right? And now yet we have another opportunity. I hope we get it right. I hope we get it right. And I think if we all take a look at our own behavior and try to see how important it is to take the situation seriously, don't make jokes about it. It's not funny. It's triggering for a lot of people. You see all kinds of ridiculous stuff on social media. I think we need to be better than that.
Agreed.
I couldn't agree more. And I foolishly posted on social media this morning saying that if the allegations are true, I wouldn't want to see Von Miller in the NFL anymore, just the same as countless other players that we've seen allegations with, whoever those names are. I think that that's the bare minimum. And the league has not, as you said, has not held up to that end of the bargain at all, really, ever. Like, and specifically as these incidents, as I've been a fan, like every time it seems like they always make the wrong decision when it comes to those things. And maybe that is where the Bills fan base, and this is, like you're saying, a lead by example. And if we don't put up with it, and we are the ones that are like, listen, this is not going to fly, this is not something that is acceptable to us, then maybe along the way other fan bases will do the same. And that's where you have a voice and you have a power of change and can make real change within the league that sorely needs it. Because whatever the policy is, the personal conduct and everything else, it is not done. It's done. What it is there for is to protect the players more than it is to protect the people affected by the incidents that the players have caused in the past. And that's just, I mean, that's a union, that's the Players Association, that's their job. But I'm sure, it sure as hell doesn't mean that we have to be okay with that and have to stand by that. And personally, thinking of the idea of trying to watch, the fact that it's a bye week, but trying to think of a game, and if Von Miller were to run onto the field in the next couple of weeks or anything like that, like, I don't know what those feelings would be like. For me personally, I don't know what that would be for the fan base, but I know that, as you're saying, Robin, it would be crazy divisive, and that's what we've seen a lot today. And I just urge people, to not jump to conclusions, but also let's, in both ways, to not jump to tone it down, but not jump to conclusions, and just humanize everything. Like, don't think of this as Von Miller, the football player. Think of this as the man. If you were reading any news story, if you were, going through anything and seeing what you were seeing, and how that would make you feel, and how it would make you feel if someone in your life was affected by that, which is why we wanted to share the resources at the top and everything else, because this is something that happens all over the country every day. And just because it's a prominent player, like, that shouldn't change how you feel about it personally at all.
It shouldn't. But we all know how the justice system works, and it works in its own strange ways. And who knows what pathway that will take. And we sometimes see when a player has certain resources, they're well-to-do, these kind of cases tend to get settled out of court. And that's the problem that I see the NFL having to deal with, is we have to look at the picture. Look, as you pointed out, Jake, we have to bring it to the human level. And that's what I think sometimes gets missed, because there's so much money involved, and it's the NFL, and it becomes this great big circus tent melodrama. And what I think we need to get back to is focusing, like you said, on the human element here, and being respectful of the human element.
Yeah. To your point, Robin, I found this article published in Middlesex University of London. It was a study done by Dr. Daniel Salofsky, looking at NFL players who are still able to have successful careers after arrest for violence against women. According to him, only 21 of the 117 NFL players arrested for violence against women were found officially guilty. This was a study done for players arrested between 2000 and 2019. Quote, although the impacts of the arrest seems to be increasingly negative over time for the full population of players, perhaps due to much less tolerance for domestic violence than there was a decade ago, a player's performance and value on the field seem to negate any negative impact that an arrest may have. In other words, basically, the more talented a player has, the more a team's able to look past it. Again, quote, recent NFL history is littered with examples of high-performing players who have been given second or third chances following incidents of off-field violence in both college and the NFL, including Tyreek Hill, Adrian Peterson, Antonio Brown, Brandon Marshall, Ben Roethlisberger, among others. He also points out the most high-profile case, Ray Rice, who was banned indefinitely after he was captured on camera with a domestic incident at the Atlantic City Hotel in 2014. The crucial factor, Dr. Salofsky added, wasn't just that the incident was caught on camera, but more that everybody saw the footage, so there was considerably more backlash. So if that footage hadn't been shown, if it hadn't been captured and hadn't been released,
Mhm.
who knows what Ray Rice's career would be like today as compared to the other names I just mentioned that have been accused of domestic violence. And if we don't have any direct evidence of the allegations against Von Miller here, who knows what his career is going to be like? Whether everybody is saying on social media, well, he should never play another down again. Well, if the allegations are true, then we would, I think, all share that sentiment. But without direct proof, that may be hard to bring forward. And regardless of what the Bills do, maybe Von Miller catches on with another team going forward, who gives him a quote second, third, fourth, whatever chance. And I don't know. It's a shame that it would have to be like a direct video in order to show us what really happened, in order to do the right thing going forward for sure that we know of.
I did read today that there was audio.
They both
available.
tried to record, I believe, video or audio. I believe Jake
Right.
said that before.
Yeah.
So that might be very important information that would be helpful, as you say, to objectively look at the situation. What evidence do we have? What do we concrete have as evidence? Because you're absolutely right in terms of 21 out of 117 is
2000, yeah.
wow.
And that's like
Remarkable.
official convictions. But as you pointed out, Robin, the NFL doesn't need to wait for the justice system. They can make an assertion on their own, on the evidence that they have going forward, regardless of whether it gets settled out of court or not.
Right.
They can sort of
That's
put two
why
together and
personal
say
conduct-
that something happened and we don't approve of this.
Right. And that's why the personal conduct policy came to be
Mhm.
in the latest CBA, because I remember the discussions that were had about the personal conduct policy. And so since we have all of that in place now, which we did not have when Ray Rice incident happened, now we should be able to move forward in a timely way, because it isn't a matter of adjudication, it's a matter of a personal conduct policy. And if that is clearly stated, then there is no reason, if the evidence shows, and I'm hard pressed to believe that the NFL could not find investigators able to ferret out exactly what happened and
Mhm.
do it in a timely way. So that's what I'm going to be. That's kind of where I'm at right now in terms of, okay, let's see what the NFL's response is, because I hope it's swift, and I hope they do the right thing, as Jake pointed out. There's been so many times when they've gone, it's like the fork in the road, and every time they seem to go down the wrong pathway with
Yep.
this issue. And it's like it just repeatedly has to happen. When are we going to get it right? I think maybe now would be a good time.
Now, Mike Florio on Pro Football Talk, and we have our opinions about him, but according to him, Miller's contract allows the Bills to void the guarantee if he is suspended under the personal contact policy. So a lot of people are basically saying, well, because of all the cap hits and the dead cap and all that money that Von Miller is guaranteed for this season and next season, it would make it very hard to cut him without very serious salary cap repercussions. But if he can be suspended under the personal conduct policy, and if they can void his contract under that situation, then I would say it's a pretty cut and dry case, given these allegations and the serious nature of them.
It would seem so. And hopefully we have learned, and maybe we'll become more efficient and better. It's unfortunate that we have to keep revisiting this issue over and over again, which begs the question of, when are we going to start having the difficult conversations that we need to have? Because I was talking with my other podcast partner, T, earlier today. We don't know what to believe at this point. And we need direction, we need competence, and we need efficiency, I think, in the system for us to feel like we can have faith that these situations are going to be dealt with appropriately. Because, and again, these things happen both ways. Men and women in terms of victims of domestic violence, but I can only speak as a woman. I feel somewhat hypocritical that I'm still watching football
Mhm.
because I have some of my friends who say to me, like, "Are you okay with all this stuff, Robin? Because somehow knowing you, this just doesn't seem like something that you would want to do. Follow it, a football team or a league that handles domestic violence in such horrible ways." I don't always have an answer for that. I don't. I think that we can do a much better job. And that's why I feel like there's it's like this call to action. Bills fans, can we do something different? Can we be the agents of change? Can we step forward in a meaningful way as a fan base and help? Look, if Roger Goodell needs help, we'll give him all the help he needs. But the point is, I think that there is an opportunity here. And when we have horrible things happen, for me, the only way I can make sense of things is to look for opportunity. What opportunity do we have in this situation to make it better? And I think one of the things that we can do is be leaders as a fan base.
And I think Bills fans, at least as much as any other fan base, if not more so, because of this tight knit community, because Bills Mafia and so many other things have brought us together. And as far as doing good things, it's a city of good neighbors for a good reason. And other fan bases have probably had to go through similar things, but I think Bills fans, and you're going to get the sensationalist, negative people in here, just in this fan base, just like any other fan base, and you just have to try to brush that aside and focus on positive things and trying to be positive going forward. It's a more, I think it's a more tight knit fan base than most other fan bases, and people like Del Reed out there who are trying their best to make a positive change in their communities. From that to just little things like shoveling out people's driveways when a big snowstorm hits. It's little things like that I think define Buffalo and Bills fans in general. And I hope that's the part of Bills fans that comes out of this whole incident as far as how we want to conduct ourselves going forward. My thoughts really are with how we felt about Browns fans and how after they had signed Deshaun Watson with all his allegations that he had around him, and how he settled out of court. And there was really, after a year off from the NFL, I don't recall, was he officially suspended by the NFL under the personal conduct policy, or did he just essentially take a year off because he was dealing with his legal allegations?
They gave him a retroactive suspension and then gave him the additional, I can't remember what it was, 11 games, I believe, or whatever the suspension was, 11 or 12 games last year.
Yeah. So we've seen Browns fans, some of them were very upset when Deshaun Watson was signed by the team, especially for that amount of money, guaranteed money. Mm. And we've occasionally seen, Browns fans attending games wearing, shirts and signs, basically in defiance of all those concerns and people who are upset over it. And I just hope that most of Bills fans are going to be a lot more mature about their perspective on this going forward.
Thoughtful. We need to be more thoughtful about the whole process. And that's such a great example, Michael. The Deshaun Watson situation went on and on and on and on, and still there was no true resolution. It ended up the way it ended up. I hope Browns fans are happy. I would have a very hard time being a Browns fan under those circumstances. I'm going to have a hard time being a Bills fan if this situation isn't handled in a manner that I think is respectful to the situation.
Same here.
Same. Yep. I think we're all in agreement with that. I think that there is a great opportunity. The power of our voices, like you're saying, and the power of a fan base's voices and just the general public is extremely it's poignant. Like we can create so much change if we stand up against that and don't allow those things to do that. Like that is what this is. That is, like you said, I'm the same as you, Robin. I would look to opportunities of how can we be better and how can we improve on this. And I think that there is an opportunity with this fan base, whether it be donating to these two causes that are in support of domestic violence victims and bringing some good out of the situation, or just being like, we're not going to support this if there is the Bills or the NFL makes a decision that, that we don't think is the right decision. And it's an interesting spot to see the Buffalo Bills in, because I do think that the fan base and the organization is different than a lot of these organizations, and we've seen how they've handled them in the past, and I hope that is the case. I also think it's different because Von Miller is, like, in all of these, you mentioned all the cases since 2000, maybe the most or one of the most prominent players that has been involved in these. He's a future Hall of Famer. He's a Super Bowl MVP. Like, people just know generally who Von Miller is. So the attention brought to this just because of who he is, regardless of anything else, hopefully can spur on some change for the better too, because it will bring more attention to the issue and what the NFL should do. Like, this is going to be on, I think this news maybe came out 10:30 Central, so maybe like around lunchtime Eastern. So everything, we haven't gotten all the morning news shows discussing it and everything else. And hopefully that power of people talking and news journalists doing the right thing and putting the pressure on the league to do the right thing can bring us to a solution that we all feel better about. But I know that we all just don't feel good about it today, no matter what. That's for sure.
I did see that First Take briefly touched on it, and Stephen A. Smith, while they all agreed that there, allegations coming in, there wasn't much detail they had at that time. But I think Stephen A. Smith put it very well when he said, I think we can all agree that on one point, regardless of the truth of these allegations, is you don't put your hands on women.
Yes. It's simple as that. Like, there's nothing else to be said. And that is what I said. I foolishly put out a tweet earlier mostly because of the reaction that I got to some of it. I knew that there would be some crazy reaction, just being like, whatever, the sensationalized just negativity and everything else. And I think that that's a really low bar to reach, is to not put your hands personally on anybody, assaulting anybody in any way, but especially a woman. And especially if you're in any position of power like that. If the allegations are true, it's a truly despicable act. And I don't feel like that's a controversial statement to make in public or on this podcast.
It doesn't need to be a pregnant woman for it to be even more despicable. I mean,
yes.
Never mind the fact that anybody who allegedly puts their hands on a woman, if she's pregnant and there's another life that's about to be coming into the world that's going to be involved. I mean, and according to what you read, the warrant, the affidavit or whatever, that she was, crying out that I'm pregnant, as if she has to remind him, according to these allegations. It's just mind-boggling that anybody would be upset over anything to the point where, I mean, forget it, regardless of the reason, regardless of the argument, we should all be conscious enough to never let ourselves reach that point of physical violence of any kind. And the fact that this is a pregnant woman involved, it just makes it even that much more disturbing.
Horrific. I just hope that we can all get through this and be better for it in the long run.
That's all we can do. And I think that we will use our platforms and our voices to try to spread some good out of this and the truth, and facts of what is happening, and going from there. If you all don't have anything to add, I think this has gone on. We've had a great conversation just to talk through ourselves, and also I think bring some perspective on to how to handle these things going forward. And if you are questioning yourself as a Bills fan, an NFL fan, and a football fan of any sort, like, I don't blame you. We're all having those same conversations here with ourselves. I don't know what it's going to be like watching whether Von Miller is off the team or not. I think that this is like one of those things, and just as you keep growing up and you keep seeing these things happen, and just wonder where the place is for it in your life, that's not a you're not alone in that, and you're not wrong for considering that, no matter what anybody else says. Stick to your good morals and what you know is right in the world, and that will usually lead the right way. So I'll put up if any of you have any other thoughts, I want to jump in, but I'll put up the resources here. They're underneath the tweet for this as well, for the show that came up on X, and we'll put them in the YouTube comments as well afterwards. But
Yeah,
thank you,
and
Robin. Go ahead.
I just want to say one more thing, and that is that my DMs are always open. Okay. If anybody feels like they have anything they want to talk about, but they don't feel comfortable talking about it publicly or whatever, I'm at Robin Mundy YO on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. And I'm open and I'm available.
It's good to know.
Thank you, Robin. And thank you for joining. Thank you, Mike. And we'll be back next week. Have a nice night, everybody.